All right, good morning, Northwestern, and thank you for joining us on another edition of SOA Chats. My name is Joe Littell. I'm with the Student Organizations and Activities team at Northwestern, and I'm joined by a couple of co-panelists who I'll introduce in just a moment. This morning, the focus is all about student organization event standards and resources. And we know that in a pre-pandemic academic year, in any given week, there's a number of invited speakers to campus for engagements with students. There's workshops, panels, mentoring events, peer groups, in addition to all of the performing arts, competitive sports clubs, and so much more. This year and last spring, obviously a little bit different. And we're here to share a little bit of information about the state of events on campus and virtual events at Northwestern. So why today? Well, as a matter of fact, pulling up the Daily Northwestern's online edition, two headlines right on the front page directly related to this topic. The first is a story where a reporter talks to students who are not on or off campus, or they're off campus, but they're not near Evanston, and the struggle to feel connected as a Northwestern student. The second piece is the announcement about Dance Marathon 2021, how that program is going to run. Usually that event has thousands of students involved that first weekend of March. So check out the Daily Northwestern for more information about how they're making adjustments to keep everyone safe and abide by campus and local event and gathering standards. So that's why we want to talk about it today. There's a lot going on. We know there's over 350 groups. They're all used to putting on meetings, gatherings, events for their peers. And so here's our agenda for today's session. I'll introduce our panelists, one of whom is able to join. Another one's having a tech issue. We'll see if we can get them into the meeting momentarily. And then importantly, we're going to define virtual and hybrid events because they're terms that get thrown around a lot in SOA communication, communication from university leadership. And we'll share a little bit about the Hybrid Events Review Committee, which one of our panelists is a part of. And then we're also going to learn about the resources available for student org event planners. So as students are working within these changing restrictions and updated guidelines, there's some staff here to help you navigate it all and make you have a successful event. Then we'll wrap with a Q&A. So for folks who are joining, feel free to add your name, your role with an organization, and the organizations you are here representing. Also use the chat to add questions. I'll keep one eye over on that as well. And we'll either address questions while we're on that topic, or we'll get to them in the Q&A section of today's event. So joining us right now, we have Dornette Ashley from Norris Event Management. Dornette assists student groups and all sorts of parties who use space on the Evanston campus. And normally it's everything from finding the right venue to the right sort of production setup that's needed for an event, to consultations for really specific details related to an event. Dornette, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We will also be joined momentarily by Bianca Bradshaw-Castillo. Bianca is part of the Campus Life team and is the point of contact not only for student organization contract questions, so groups that are going to be contracting service providers, whether it's a guest speaker, whether it's rights for a performing arts production or film, or renting equipment, anything that has terms of agreement. Bianca assists with that. And Bianca is also part of that hybrid events review committee. So we'll try and get Bianca in here momentarily. If not, I'll do my best to cover in Bianca's absence. But first, to start with some relevant terms. We look at student org events in terms of the physical presence by this kind of division of three. So the first is what was most common pre-pandemic, in-person events, whether it was a guest speaker, whether it was something that was interactive, physical presence required. It was held in a specific place. It was part of the advertisement leading up to it, and you went and participated. Virtual events, complete remote experience. And that's what SOA advises all student org exec meetings, all advisor and student contact meetings to exist in. And most large gatherings are expected to go virtual. So rather than bringing a speaker to, say, Khan Auditorium, setting up an online event where students can log in to participate in an event that way using a piece of technology, usually a computer or a mobile device. And then in terms of the contract piece related to virtual events, that's something to discuss with your advisor as well as Bianca from Campus Life. So we know when there's someone physically coming to campus, there's a lot of terms that get signed off on, and there can be a little bit of a negotiation back and forth about their appearance. When it's virtual, there's still some terms to determine, but the contract process might be a little bit different. There's more information about this topic on the SOA website in the org officer section in the planning and event page. And then what we're going to focus on today are hybrid events. So this is where there's an in-person component for some participants, but the vast majority of those who are experiencing, participating, viewing are doing so in a virtual environment. Some examples of this might be someone invited to play music on campus. They might need a physical venue in order to perform, and there may be a few folks assisting with the production, but most of the people involved in that event, including members of that org and anyone else who's invited to view, are going to be viewing it remotely, and they're going to have instructions on how to do so. Another example might be a student org bonding event that involves arts and crafts, and there may be an assigned time for students to pick up specific items they'll need for an activity. But they're not all going to be doing it together, and they're not all going to, arrive together. But then they'll have the remote part of that environment when they actually complete maybe like a paint by numbers or similar activity. So hybrid events, any submission for a hybrid events review committee is going to the committee, which consists of folks from student engagement, risk management, health promotion and wellness, the Dean of Students Office, and more. And this group reviews new submissions every Friday. And Bianca is the point of contact to reach out to students. So for any students that are having trouble with that submission form, or they have questions about the status, Bianca is going to be the go-to for that. And this is specifically for events submitted that'll be hosted by student organizations, as well as fraternity and sorority chapters at Northwestern. So any events submitted on behalf of maybe like a residence-based group or just kind of an unofficial student group, they generally aren't going through this HERC process. So while we wait for Bianca to join, I'll handle a couple of these prompts for folks who are here. So to get started, if a student is interested in proposing a hybrid event, I'm actually going to navigate to the page on the SOA website where you do so. Okay, so folks should be able to see my browser. The site you'll visit is northwestern.edu/student-orgs. You can also Google SOA Northwestern. That'll get you to the same spot. Under the Organization Officers tab, you'll see this Planning and Event page. And there we have information about standards and guidelines for virtual events, as well as hybrid events. And you'll see the Health and Safety Risk Mitigation Plan. And so this is the form that you'll get started on as you're proposing to host a hybrid event. General information about the organization, general information about the activity, fill it out as complete as you can. If there's a specific field you don't know the answer to or that's getting you hung up, reach out to Bianca via email on that, or just simply put not determined at this time or I don't know. This is a fairly transparent process, so there's an opportunity to follow up and add details or communicate further with the committee. But to get your submission in on in a timely fashion, we do encourage you to make this the first step as part of your event planning. I'm going to switch back over to PowerPoint. One moment. Okay. So you'll need a little bit of information to complete that form, including a proposed date, an estimate of how many people will physically be present, but it's also important to include how folks who aren't physically present can participate in the event. So it can either be, something is recorded live or it's available after the event is done, but there needs to be a consideration for those folks who aren't physically present, whether out of ability or out of comfort or local guidelines. Okay, and I see Bianca has joined us on the phone this morning, and we actually have a question for you, Bianca. So perhaps you could share what happens after this hybrid event submission form gets submitted. What are the committee's considerations that would determine approval for a submission?
Sure. Hi, good morning, and sorry for being late and having some sort of tech issues there. So in terms of what happens after the form is submitted, I will get a notification in my email, and then I enter all the information that you've entered in the form into a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet is reviewed between the time of your submission and before whatever meeting we have on the following Friday. On Fridays around 11 a.m. the committee meets, and the committee, I'm sorry, Joe, if I'm saying things that you have already shared, but the committee is comprised of people from several different departments. So we have a bunch of different voices and perspectives when considering the event.
Bianca, can you share what some of the considerations or discussions are in the committee that might determine whether a submission is approved or rejected?
Sure. So some of the things that are considered are the place that you're looking at, the space. We really have decided that our scope is Norris spaces. So sometimes we'll get a submission that's outside of Norris. People are looking at different spaces and sometimes looking at different outside spaces. So those will sort of automatically be bypassed by us. We're looking at things like making sure that you are communicating with those that you've invited in terms of having masks and sanitizers, following precautions. We're making sure you have a plan for physically distancing at the event, that your numbers are in line with the space that you're looking at. We're looking for spaces that are well ventilated with a preference for outdoor spaces, which is a little bit difficult now given, just the temperature outside. Trying to think, what else are we looking for? I mean, we're really looking for we're looking at the details, but we're also looking at well thought out plans. And we're kind of looking that the students have maybe thought about what could go wrong and planning accordingly for that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bianca. I appreciate that. And I'll also add, I shared just before you joined that it's a fairly transparent process with this committee. If there's ever details that change or need to be updated, students can contact you by email and you'll relay that along to the committee. It's not as if, a field is missing or something is inaccurate in the form, it automatically is a no. Next question is for Dornette. So we talked about Norris Center managed spaces. So could you talk about the venues and facilities that student organizations can seek for their hybrid event when we talk about Norris managed spaces?
Yes. So for a hybrid right now, we are navigating through that as hybrid requires some additional equipment. Right now, we're looking at the alumni room. We tested it out yesterday in our team meeting and it looks pretty cool. So that is still ongoing right now. Definitely, we know it's in high demand, but we're working through it.
And can student groups request any of the Norris satellite venues for in-person gathering or events?
So no, not just yet. What we are looking to do is host events with about 10 people in person. So we would have to make sure we're practicing the social distancing and that folks are wearing their mask. What I would suggest is that people could do is submit a request, and pretty much like Bianca said, we'll try to navigate through that request to see how we can best assist them.
Perfect. And in case I didn't mention it, the submission form is the first step. So you can always call or email the Norris Events desk and ask about availability, but student groups should be submitting that hybrid events request form before attempting to reserve any spaces. Okay, next question. Dornette, can you share a little bit about, I know that pre-pandemic, your team would often meet with student groups and not only identify a venue to host an event, but also ask the detailed questions about equipment they may need, if there's going to be food and beverage available, any sort of tech that the event may require. Can you share a little bit about any resources that your team offers to support virtual events hosted by student organizations?
Absolutely. So with virtual events, and first I'd like to apologize. I too have some technical difficulties in getting my camera working. I promise my hair was super combed and I was ready. So please excuse me. Um, so in thinking about virtual events, right? So we support through both Zoom and Hopin. We do require a 10 business day out notice for all virtual events. And we do send the client a virtual intake form, which they would complete that would detail, prompts that we have about their event. So we also have our tech specialists who can assist in managing these virtual events. And so they, much like what you're doing right now, Joe, they can do the recording, they can assist with like the breakout rooms and managing of the waiting room. And these virtual events we have found are great for like team and department meetings, as well as events that require direct engagement or collaboration. And also if a student group and or department wanted to do a virtual presentation, a conference or an expo, our team could also help them navigate that. And so with our virtual events, we do offer a walkthrough. So let's say you have a hop-in event and what we can do is create a demo that can tailor to your event and kind of show you what that would look like. And we also would do a event consultation. So again, we wouldn't just throw someone to the wolves. We would actually help them navigate their event, find out if Zoom would work better versus a hop-in event, again, just based on their event. And then we have fun things, right? So we can do like polls on it. We can do like muting of mics. Whew. We could also do like moderating, again, like what you're doing of like Q&A. So definitely I would encourage folks to go to the Norris Center website if they have any additional questions.
Thanks for that, Dornette. And I'll add that we know that security has been such a concern with virtual and hybrid events, and the Norris Events team can assist with security concerns so that your event can reach the audience that you want, but certainly not, folks that are not invited to your event.
Absolutely.
All right. So with that, I see there's a few folks that are here live in the Zoom meeting. If folks have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat. But in the meantime, I'll start with Dornette. Is there anything else you'd want student organization event planners to know from the Norris Events team?
I'll add that right now, well, it's January, but we do also offer outdoor events, right? So that could be an option as the weather warms up in the next couple of months, fingers crossed, hopefully. We also, in working with Bianca, we want to get to a yes, right? So we don't want to be the no in Norris. We do understand that these are some different times. So we want students to still have that experience of having events on campus. It's just a matter of planning and ensuring everyone's safety.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Dornette. And Bianca, anything you'd want to add from the hybrid events review committee?
I think I'll just sort of piggyback on what Dornette just shared. I also think it's worth mentioning that, we're in January and we don't know what things are going to look like a month from now, 2 months from now. Know that the committee is like flexible and willing to work with students, and things are changing, and we will do our best to sort of work with students to, make the event happen or plan accordingly. I also will add that sort of the sooner that you take that first step of submitting the form, the sooner that we can get going on things. So sometimes after these committee meetings on Friday, we won't actually get an official approval or denial. We'll just get a bunch of feedback. So I want to have some time to reach out to students and provide that feedback, ask them questions. So I would say the sooner in the process that you're able to get started, don't let not being able to fill in a certain field in the form stop you from submitting.
Absolutely, that's true. And I'd like to add to that even if it's a student group looking to put on an event 3-4 months down the line, and they're just trying to figure out options, we know that obviously all these new terms that we're learning from the past year, tiers, phases, capacities, all these things are changing. And so as things change and hopefully improve, there's light at the end of the tunnel, get that submission in, and our committee will continue to work with you as that date approaches, because maybe at something that gets proposed today doesn't seem like it's going to work after committee discussion, but maybe a month from now, it's very different what those restrictions are in terms of physical gatherings. So the committee will go back to those that have events that were proposed far off in the future and work with them to, try and make it the type of experience they want it to be. So as we said, yeah, that form is the first step. And we do have a couple questions that were added to the chat. One is, Dornette, if you could share a little bit more about Hopin as an alternative to Zoom, when a student group might be using that platform.
I was muted. My apologies. So again, one of the first things I want to stress on is planning 10 business days out. I cannot stress that enough, as our tech specialists are servicing the entire community. But when it comes to the events that you'll want to do on Hopin, namely anything that would require like breakout rooms, like if you have an event and you're going to need like 10 people over here, 10 people over there, Hopin is great for breakout rooms. It's also good for when you want to do like a collaboration. If you're looking to do like an expo or a virtual presentation, also Hopin is pretty cool. If you are a professional staff member, think about some of the events that we've recently had on Hopin, the assessments event, the student affairs events, and how we are navigating that, where you start in a session, you kind of break out, you can do like one-on-one. So with Hopin, it really is what it says, is Hopin. So you have the option of going to different events on one platform.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too, that with the Norris tech specialists and event professionals, having that personnel support for an event like that is huge, because it's kind of migrates a conference and makes it virtual. So you need some people there to help those folks that aren't quite sure what to look for to find where they need to go. One other question from an advisor, Bianca, they want to know, what is their role in terms of contracts for guest speakers? And I'll add, specifically in the virtual environment. What's the advisor's role in that? And what is Campus Life's role in that for a student org?
Sure. So I think the contracts come in sort of after the submission and the event approval, just in terms of timeline. You don't want to submit a contract for an event, for a speaker when the event is not going to happen. In terms of what the advisor's role is, I would say just reviewing the contract in the same way that you would make sure that you're aware of the event in the case that myself or someone from HERC reaches out with questions. We don't want an advisor to be, saying, oh, I didn't even know that my group was going to, invite so-and-so. I would say supporting the student if they're having some issues. We are navigating different things than we were a year ago when it comes to COVID, and some agencies have made new rules. We've added some different language to our RSO agreement. So I think helping understand and sort of bridge that gap if the students need support. I think that's sort of what first comes to mind.
Definitely. And even for virtual events, I know even if it's like an unpaid speaking engagement, when someone visits campus, sometimes it's still required for that speaker to carry insurance in case there's an incident that occurs while they're present. In a virtual event, that language is going to be very different, because they're not physically coming to Northwestern, but they still might be participating in a Northwestern Zoom hosted event or providing their own tech. So you're going to want to definitely get in touch with Bianca for the ins and outs of that. but most advisors are not authorized to sign most contracts. So again, if students are bringing advisors contracts, look them over. There should be a cover sheet. I can include the link for that in an email to you. And then it's mostly going to go through Campus Life, but we'll happily handle any questions you have. Well, I want to thank both our panelists, Dornette. Oh, go ahead, Bianca.
I was going to add, you know, we have become a little more flexible in terms of the cover sheet and just allowing student groups when they email me the contract, because the process looks very different now, again, digitally than it would if you were bringing your contract into the source. But including the advisor on the email that the student sends is also okay.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bianca. We always want to keep the advisors in the know of what the groups are up to. So thank you again to Bianca and Dornette for joining us. If folks have further questions, feel free to add them to the chat, and I'll make sure, if we don't have time at the conclusion, to get emails out to our guest speakers today. As we wrap, a couple announcements. Join us at the same time next week. I'll be offering a demo all about student org elections. We can manage them on Wildcat Connection. It's what ASG uses. It's what many of the residential colleges use. And we always update information about these upcoming SOA Chats events on our Instagram and Facebook accounts. We'll also be adding a recording of this session to our YouTube account by Monday. So if you know of colleagues, students, peers who wish to take a look, invite them to join us on YouTube. And lastly, for those of you involved in student orgs, we are launching a new digital journal hosted on the SOA website, as well as Wildcat Connection, collecting perspectives from the student org community. There's a brief form students complete. You can find it on the SOA Wildcat Connection page, where they share what they're thinking about submitting, just very general topic. And it's everything from, you know, students sharing their stories over the course of many years, finding their belonging in a student organization, or it could be a list of pro tips they've learned or moments of learning on a variety of topics. We will have this launched in early February, and as an incentive, grants are available to student orgs. So submissions are accepted on a rolling basis, and there's more information about this on the SOA Wildcat Connection page. With that, thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful Friday and a magnificent weekend, and we'll see you next time.